Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the second breakfast conversation series hosted by our nonprofit SciArt Services. I won't bore you with our mission and vision, but SciArt Services, in brief, I'll tell you what we do. We try to fill in gaps in K-12 education, particularly in the United States. But now, with the whole world going virtual, we've been able to also bring in audiences from different parts of the world. We run a program called Printable Programming, conceptualized by my husband, Professor Krishnan Suresh, that aims to get students, middle schoolers, into programming, and especially targets girls who are very interested in programming because it's a very hands-on way of learning programming and seeing tangible results. The other things we do is we propagate the arts. We support underprivileged students, both STEM and arts, with scholarships. We also bring in eminent artists and scientists to give talks and to inspire young audiences. So, with that, I just want to say a few words about our chief speaker for the day, Vanitha Kumar. She is the Vice President of Software Engineering at Qualcomm, has over 24 years of experience in the telecommunications industry, and has degrees in electrical engineering and electronics and communication engineering, and is very, very accomplished, over 200 patents, has given a lot of talks. I'm not reading this off a resume, so let me know if I'm missing something, Vanitha. I've just internalized whatever I read from your bio. But on a side note, I also know Vanitha Kumar and her family through Soumya Acharya, who's here. Thanks to her introduction. Vanitha Kumar is also a very good musician. She plays the Saraswati Veena, which is a fretted lute. She is a fitness enthusiast and a super mom. I've seen how much of interest she takes in her daughters. So one of the biggest reasons I wanted to have Vanitha here today is because a lot of people think that if you're at the top, you can't do other things. And she's one of those people who has definitely done a lot of other things and has also been a very good parent. So welcome, Vanitha. Such a pleasure to have you here today.
Thank you so much, Vanitha, for this opportunity. And I don't know if deserving of all of those words, but that was a very, very kind introduction. And actually, another way that I know Vanitha Suresh, and again, thanks to Soumya here, is because my actually kids learned music from Vanitha for a few years, and we have actually spent a lot of time in Madison with her because of that. And in that process, we've actually gotten to know her, her husband Suresh, her two very, very accomplished sons. And I'm very, very thankful to Vanitha because I think she taught my kids not just music, but in general, a lot of excellent work ethics in terms of how to stick with something and how to really, work hard at it and finally see the results. So, I'm definitely very, very grateful to her for teaching that to my kids.
Thank you, Vanitha. We also have Komala Chenna here as the moderator for this session. We want to make this as interactive as possible, so chime in and ask questions. Maybe you could raise hands or text if you have a question. Komala Chenna is another person I've gotten to know through music because she learned music from me for like maybe a little over a year. Very, very, very talented. She's a go-getter, very unassuming at the same time. We've also had the pleasure of working with her in our printable programming sessions that we did at the Boys and Girls Club of Dane County that caters to underprivileged students, especially African American kids. And Komala Chinna did a phenomenal job with that, in inspiring all those young kids to learn printable programming. She also is the head of the co-founder of a startup called Sapientia Raise It. And this is an organization that has been incorporated in IIM Bangalore. So she's originally from India and she moved to UW Madison to finish her engineering undergraduate degree. I'm very happy Komala is here today. I just caught her just in time and I thought she would be the best person to be inspired even further by you, Vanitha, and ask you questions because I sort of see a lot of similarities between you and her. So I think you'll really enjoy interacting with her as well. Welcome again to all the participants. I know several adults reached out asking to be part of this as well. I'm really happy that you're here. the idea of the session is not to just inspire youngsters, but to also inspire people of all ages, because we all need that inspiration. And I think I'm going to be personally inspired by the session at the end of it. So without further ado, I'll let you take on the platform, Vanitha.
Okay. So I can just start by, saying something about myself, and if it's
I would request everybody to turn on their videos, because I think it'll make more sense for Vanitha if she sees some faces here. Please turn on your videos, but turn off your audio though. Please mute yourselves.
okay, I'll just share a few slides. And Komala, it's actually, great to be participating in this session with you. And actually, I just spoke to Komala for a few minutes a couple of days ago, and I can see why she's such an inspiring young person. So, to be so young and to have done so much, it's quite something. I mean, I didn't do anything close to what you have done at your age. So
oh my god, thank you guys so much. Thank you all. But honestly, I'm so glad that Vanitha ma'am, like she really said, caught me right in the moment. I'm really, really excited for this session, how everybody involved can take the best lessons from this and move on with their careers. So thank you. Thank you again for inviting me, ma'am, and thank you for everything, Vanitha. Okay. I think you can start sharing your presentation that I think you have.
okay, there we go. Okay, can you all see my screen?
Yep.
But this is probably distracting.
Yes.
Hide that. Okay. So this is just a little bit about me, and I guess again in person this would have been a little bit different to present. So so bear with me. So hopefully I can just give you a little idea of who I am and what I work on. So that's me in my lab. I am born and brought up in Chennai. I graduated with my undergraduate degree, which is a BE in Electronics and Communications Engineering from PSG Tech in Coimbatore in 1994. After that, I pretty much came, directly here to Northeastern University in Boston. And I would say it was almost like by luck, I actually ended up in San Diego. So I just happened to do a thesis on something called multicast protocols for cellular networks. And coming from Chennai, brought up in that really warm, humid weather, like the super cold Boston simply did not work out for me at all. It was just like too much for me to be happy there. So, and at that time, Qualcomm was really not a big company at all. They were like maybe less than like 4,000 employees or so at that time. And they were planning to reinvent something, like very revolutionary in wireless, trying to commercialize, what was called a CDMA, what is still called a CDMA, but for the first time in cellular networks. So it seemed exciting enough, and I loved San Diego. San Diego is such a beautiful place. So that's pretty much what drew me to Qualcomm. And currently, this is my job. I serve as vice president in their chipset modem software group. And this is my field of focus. So basically, I focus on wireless technologies, anything on your phone that actually gives you the real connectivity, no matter what generation of technology it is. And the same technology that focuses on Internet of Things, and automotive software, all the adjacent segments which pretty much work on the same connectivity. That's my focus. And I'm married, and I have two daughters who are like 19 and 15. So that's pretty much me in terms of, in a nutshell, I would say. So in terms of exactly what I do, this is kind of what I do. I would say, like, I would like to think that what I do is turn your phone into the small miracle that it truly is. Because I think today I think it's definitely safe for me to say I can never survive even for a few minutes, without my cell phone. In fact, my kids are always joking that I panic more if I cannot find my phone, compared to not finding them, which kind of makes sense because if I have my phone, I know exactly where they are because I have full tracking of my kids on my phone. So it kind of makes sense that I panic more. And inside that phone that you all have, there is the small chip of ours, which pretty much makes all the magic happen, that provides pretty much all the phone calls, texts, emails, all your uploads and downloads functionality. And that is accomplished through the cellular stack that my global team provides. So I would like to think I have a little fingerprint, of myself in all of your lives, and I'm immensely happy about that. Uh, so that's a chip, of course, we have many generations of the chipset. So that is basically, the center of my life. So that's pretty much what I do. Um, what I'm truly excited about for the future, it's this, right? Truly believe the invention age is here. And why I'm saying that is because if you look at what we have been doing for the last 30 years, it's been all about connecting people, right? Connecting people to each other, significant evolution of mobile devices, connectivity, through, the virtual world, internet, and we all know how much we depended on it, especially this past year, right? Just think about what we would have done if we didn't have this much connectivity this past challenging year of a global pandemic, right? We pretty much relied on these technologies to keep us connected, to keep us educated, to keep us employed, all of that stuff. But I would say if that was not transformation enough, I think we are about to go through another very, very interesting transformation over the next 30 years, which is basically connecting the world around us. So this is where I'm talking about us connecting to the devices around us, cars talking to cars talking to traffic lights, cars talking to parking meters. So basically the world around us getting a lot more intelligent and our ability to interact with that world. So that is pretty much, the world that we are marching towards. And that's kind of what I spend most of my time on these days. So this is pretty much, and this didn't happen one fine day, right? We have been building on this slowly over the years. And right now, we are, pretty much at the start of this 5G technology, and the mission of the technology is basically to really connect everything, and that's where I spend a lot of my time on these days. So also happen to work quite a bit on 3G. I actually led the 4G software team in Qualcomm, and pretty much saw the launch of it, from its very first device all the way to how much it has helped us evolve the technologies that we're used to seeing on the mobile, anything from like ordering a pizza on our phone, to not even having an external GPS receiver, right? You get real-time traffic updates as you're driving. All of that was possible because of the connectivity that the 4G offered, and we are kind of about to push the bar across the board with 5G. So, and this is like the future that, as we imagine it today, and that's why this is an invention age, right? There's an opportunity for everybody to invent in so many different sectors. So that if you can think of a world like this where you're kind of, very freely interacting with the virtual world as well as the digital world as well as the real world, right? Think about the number of applications you can think of, like in smart cities, agriculture, automotive, industrial automation, medical advancements, right? So there's really no end to this highly connected world, and this is the future that I would like to believe is really not too far away at all. So that's a little bit about who I am, what I'm passionate about, and what I do.
Wow. Wow. Thank you so much, Vanitha. That was amazing. It really shows how, like you rightly said, you have an impact on each of our lives in this subconscious way that we don't even think about. In almost everything that we do throughout the day, there is something that you have done for us that, we may or may not take for granted in all the simple things that we do. So everyone, we saw, what exactly Miss Vanitha does in her work. Now let's try to look at maybe what a day in her life looks like. What does she really go ahead and do, right? How does she communicate with her team? How does her team look like? How do they really get these ideas out into the world and make this impact that they want to create into the customers, into the people? Yeah, so I think Vanitha, ma'am, if you can talk to us about how your daily life looks like, how do you talk to your team, and what really goes on at Qualcomm?
Actually, once somebody asked me if we had aliens locked up in the basement of Qualcomm. So, so people have all kinds of wild ideas about what actually happens in a tech company. No, we don't have actually any aliens. Believe it or not, whatever we do, we get it done with like real people. So I do have a global team, right? So I have a big part of my team in San Diego, and I would say I have like an equal size team in Hyderabad, India, and I also have a team in China. So these three, I would say, are like three big hubs of at least my team, and we kind of really need this. I would say. Not just for the talent diversity, but we also need it for the time diversity, because Qualcomm, because of the number of customers, as you can see, we are generally responsible for so many key, connected devices out there, whether it's like, phones or, tablets, any of that stuff. So you can imagine it's a 24/7 operation for us in terms of like, not just developing the technologies, you have to get it in the hands of the users and get them to be really successful, because they all, as you can see, every phone, it doesn't look exactly the same. They have like different designs. That means different challenges in terms of how they may work, and the field deployments are also different, right? Something doesn't work in a suburb area in Connecticut, or something does not work in a parking lot in Oregon. So we have to deal with all of that, because they're all uh, very dynamic radio conditions, and we have to make our products work across all of that. So if you are looking at if I want to just in a nutshell say what my day is like, it's all about decisions. So I literally go from meetings to meetings, but the kind of decisions I make is different in all of those meetings, because sometimes we're talking about how to support a customer to launch something in the next month, but sometimes we are talking about what technology or what product to incorporate in our roadmap a year from now, 2 years from now. Sometimes we are making decisions about what is the right hardware architecture to choose, whether we want to implement something in hardware or software, whether we want what is the right kind of RF pairing we want, how do we want that design to look like. So and what I have to do on a different hour changes based on what I'm actually dealing with. So it is a lot of context switching for me. So sometimes it's about, what kind of lab equipment we may need, and how do we plan for that budget for the next year. Sometimes it's about, hey, who do we assign to what projects. And of course, once a year we have to do these reviews. So it's all about like performance and promotions and budgets and that kind of stuff. So it can really vary in terms of whether it's a crisis of the day, or a roadmap for the future, or the technology of the distant future. It really varies a lot, but I would say it's like a lot of decisions and a lot of context switching. So that would pretty much summarize my day. And then we often have calls at night because of that, all the different time zones that we're talking about. That's where we kind of get in sync with the leads from the other parts of the world that I mentioned.
Wow, that seems like a really strenuous day. I hope you're not getting too uh, kind of bored with Zoom calls at this point. I'm pretty sure that would have been the whole thing of how meetings would have happened for you.
That is true. Actually, I'm somewhat zoomed out. I would say everybody is.
Yeah, I'm so sorry to hear that, and I hope that things get back to normal for you soonest. Seeing the number of vaccinations go up, I hope that everyone can, meet in person soon. So hopefully that shouldn't be a problem in the next couple of months. Yeah, so this kind of looks like what Vanitha ma'am does in her day. What do you guys have to say about that? Do you guys have any questions or anything you think a vice president would do that maybe she didn't talk about, or you know, what are your guys' thoughts?
Actually, I have a question for you, Vanitha. So
Sure.
I have a question for you. I know you've been in this very high profile role. Are there times when you actually try to take on the role of, say, a customer service representative or somebody just for fun to see what it is to be in that position? There are some people who do that in companies. I was just wondering if you ever tried that before.
So see, in Qualcomm, one advantage is because of the the kind of like the jobs that we have, right? You have to actually do a little bit of everything, which is somewhat expected. So, for example, uh, there are not just times I have done that, but I've actually been like a direct point of contact for customers as well, right? Sometimes like some if there are like some, I mean, we have some very A-list customers like most people do, and sometimes they will ask for a point contact, right? They say, hey, we don't want this jump through because our customer support is not somebody calling and saying, hey, my phone doesn't work, can you help me with it? It won't be that, right? They will clearly say, oh, look, I expected my phone to be consuming this much power in this situation, and it's not happening, right? And sometimes those problems don't get solved in one day, so in which means the engineering team directly comes in and gets involved with customers and sits through those meetings till that particular issue is resolved. So I think inherently we do have a lot of customer interaction in at work, because that is just part of what is required. Because if you are like developing a feature or like leading a key like a chipset or something like that, they will put you in front of the customers because they cannot possibly handle all the questions coming from them. I have been yelled at in all possible languages in the world. So
Oh my God. Wow. Wow, it looks like, Vanitha, you wear a lot of different hats, which, as you said, is required because you need to understand how your products are really, interacting with the people out there. So we have a question from Janani, a really good question that says, how do we decide what people are competent to work on what project with?
how do we decide what's the competency, did she say?
Yeah, like which people, like how do you hire, how do you know which people are competent for the projects that you are working on?
Actually, that's a very mature question coming from actually somebody so young, I have to say. Actually, I have a boss who would use this phrase quite a bit. He would use the word horses for courses. I mean, that's his just like favorite thing to say all the time. And basically what it says is, hey, you have to put the right people on the right job, right? Otherwise you may not really get the results that you're looking for, right? You may have like perfectly capable people, and just because you have a bunch of very, very smart and capable people doesn't mean you can get the project done. So everybody has like different strengths and weaknesses, and it's really, really important to make sure that you are really playing to people's strengths to a large extent. So and a classic example is like somebody who's like very impatient or can not handle stress very well would be a bad person to be put in front of a customer who's like basically getting really upset about something not working. I mean, that would simply not work at all, right? So we have to definitely assess. So I think we use the first couple of years when somebody just comes in, because first couple of years you really cannot fully find out what their strengths are, because they haven't like fully warmed up to the team, fully warmed up to the work culture, warmed up to the technology. So I think that is like a good assessment period. And after that we just try to see what they are excelling in, what their strengths seem to be, and make sure that we are actually playing to their strengths. And sometimes generally it's what is important is, and I think this is especially true for women, is they don't always share with us what their interests are. They just assume that, hey, whatever is given to them is what they are supposed to do. So people who actually come and actively have that conversation with their leads or their managers saying that, hey, I have tried this, but I'm a little bit bored. I want to try something else. I would like to, kind of improve XYZ quality of mine. I think those will be extremely productive because people can't always know what you're thinking, right? So I think it kind of helps if there are certain areas where somebody feels like, hey, I have been doing a lot of this, and it's kind of like a positive loop. They're doing so well because of that. They get more of those opportunities. So if they want to like work on like something else, I think it's okay to ask and take that chances so that you can kind of grow more areas.
Okay, thank you, Vanitha.
That was really helpful. Thank you.
Awesome. So we have a next question from Radha Venkatakrishnan, who says, normally women executives put their heart over their head when it comes to taking critical decisions. Do you agree with this view? And what is your experience in this regard?
It's an interesting question coming from Radha, who herself is a very, very successful executive, by the way. She's my cousin, I have to say. Well, uh, actually, I'm generally not a take decisions with my heart person. So that is like kind of my personality. So generally, there's not been like a big challenge for me. But having said that, I think it's kind of good that I think women do that a little bit, because I think that brings a lot of empathy to the decision as opposed to just being a very cold-hearted decision. So the fact that we kind of do some of that intuitively, I think it's more like a like a plus than a disadvantage. So I think that's kind of all, because then I think it kind of gives us an opportunity to kind of like look at the big picture, think about what the long-term implications of this can be to that person for the project. So I think it kind of helps us have that macro view, to some extent. So I think some decisions of the heart, I think is at least so far is not backfired for me, but in general, I'm not so much of a take decisions by heart person. So
I think I can vouch for that. I mean, knowing Vanitha for a long time, that she's definitely not a person who's going to, make some wrong decision because of thinking from the heart. But having said that, I would also say that she knows when to use it at the right time. And, I think she knows how to use both the mind and the heart at the appropriate times. And I think that's a great asset to have. And probably would have contributed a lot to, the success of her role, senior role in this company as well.
yeah, thank you, Soumya, for that. And I have to say, Soumya, she's actually a classmate of mine from PSG Tech, and we have kept in touch all these years. Another exceptional executive, Soumya runs this online platform called Acharya Net, which is basically a digital platform for learning music. A website that I've really seen her build, ground up actually, and it has so many different unique features today. So if you, people on the call, if you haven't already checked it out, you should do that.
She's going to be doing one of the sessions too very soon, Vanitha.
Oh, excellent. Okay,
yes. She's coming up in
for all of your kind
August.
words. And I would say, of course, Vanitha Suresh has been very instrumental in contributing a huge amount of goodwill, as well as she has contributed much content for the site as well. So I thank her. All her initiatives are generally very selfless and very helpful to the community as a whole. So I thank her as well.
Wow, great. I actually used Acharya Net for my music as Vanitha ma'am, because she took us through it, and she told us these are the kinds of things that we do, and me and my sisters did learn a lot from there. So that's amazing, Soumya ma'am. That's really, really amazing, and we
so glad.
really did learn a lot from the site that you have created.
Thank you so much.
Okay. So Aditi Rao Udupi says, what could be done to get girls more interested in STEAM? Oh, this is by Shyam.
So yeah, it's kind of an I mean, I don't know how much of a problem this is in India today. I think a lot of women still like kind of graduate, I would say gravitate towards engineering somewhat. naturally, or medicine or any kind of STEM fields. But here it is definitely a huge problem, because I think, well, I don't know. I have lots of different opinions about how math and science is taught in middle and high school in the US, and maybe I'll share some of those. So I think it's not like the curriculum doesn't excite kids enough in math and science. I think that is like I would say is like a fundamental problem in the US, and I think they don't like streamline the sciences in a very logical, continuous way to keep the interest. Because they like in India, for example, we do like it's like several years of physics, several years of chemistry, several years of biology, all in a very structured fashion. So you get like small doses of physics and chemistry and everything till your 10th grade, so that you had enough chance at liking the subject. And if you had a bad teacher in 1 year, have another year to rectify that. So that you can kind of like really make up your mind about the subject. Whereas in the US, like you get like a dump of physics for the first time in 9th grade, and you end up with a bad teacher or whatever, a bad experience. You have the option of saying no to physics, not just for the rest of your high school, for the rest of your life, right? That's an option here, which is like a very, very dangerous option, right? So I think that's I will blame the curriculum a little bit here. At least it's just my personal experience. And another thing is there isn't like so much talk about it's kind of very easy to understand for kids, right? Easy for them to understand what a business person does, what a lawyer does, right? What a police officer does. But it's really hard for them to understand like what an electrical engineer does. What is how do you make that cool to somebody who's in like in middle school and high school? It's really hard to explain the job that I do to a middle schooler and still make it like exciting enough for them, right? Like what does a radio engineer do? Do they know what radio waves are? How are they going to understand what the complexities are? And even worse when you talk about like hardware design, VLSI design. So I think a lot more when the whole ecosystem is not talking about engineering and science, which is the case in India, which makes it so much easier for kids to kind of go towards that. Here there isn't that, we don't have enough people talking about that, and I think that is definitely a bit of a challenge. So I think we really need to catch a lot more girls in that elementary to middle school age and kind of steer them towards science, get them excited about science. I think that is kind of where the answer lies, in my opinion. It's too late to tap them in high school.
Wow, those are some great insights, Vanitha ma'am. I actually have like I think a point to ponder with respect to what you just said. So as you mentioned, people focus less on kind of the STEM portions in middle school, and obviously, if they have just a bad teacher, they kind of forget about the subject. But there is a lot of focus in the US with respect to arts, literature, and other like creative subjects, which many people can argue brings out the true creativity and innovation within a student. So they can go ahead and do innovations beyond just the fields that they are being taught. But we can see that this isn't the case back in India, where students have a rigid syllabus of things that are taught maybe decades old, and you just need to kind of learn what's already there and move ahead. So just wanted to know what your points on that are with respect to kind of creativity, innovation, and what people need beyond just the technical knowledge.
Yeah, I mean that's a good point. So I think we kind of maybe overdo that. I think we're on the other end of the spectrum in India. You're absolutely right? Because when we were like in 11th and 12th grade, forget creativity. There isn't much time for anything else, right? Because you really have to like cram all of the stuff that you need to do to really get the career of your choice. Because there is a bit of that, oh God, if you don't like get what you want in that 1 year, that transition between 12th grade to college, whatever you want is pretty much lost for life, right? And that is, I mean, that was true to a very large extent. I mean, now some of that is changing with more kids doing their undergrad here and having more choices and everything, right? So that biggest pressure, because there was no way for us to rectify our path once you enter the first year of college, right? It's not like here you can't start your first year in humanities and switch to engineering in the second year because you found something interesting, some subject that you kind of took kind of, perk that interest, right? So because of that, there's like so much pressure in those 2 years of high school there, and that kind of like gets you into that, oh my god, let me just do what needs to, let me do whatever is required to check off these exams, check off these boxes so that I just get there. And I think where I think in India that can definitely change is, definitely having a lot more variety of subjects in college, at least, right? If like high school is such a make or a break, so that we like, I never got chances to take courses in like psychology or philosophy or something for fun, right? Just write like, paper on, in fact, we barely even had any English classes. Maybe we had one or something in 4 years of like, it was just one humanities class, 4 years of college. It's unheard of here, right? I think that would have really I think helped a lot, so that like, we helped with interaction, help with different just ways of thinking. But uh, but at the end of the day, I don't know whether it's very, given the number of successful people from that education here in the field of technology, I don't see evidence that it completely curbs creativity, at least, and there is really no evidence of that at all. But however, I would say having, I think we talked about it a couple of days ago, but having opportunities for a lot more hands-on learning in India, like, having like what inspired you to do, your startup, right? Having like, lot more opportunities for like internships and doing projects, doing basically like self-made projects, think of something and see what you want to do, like, work on it over summer or something. I think there are a lot more opportunities there. I think that will kind of keep the kids more, motivated, and get them not to steer away from engineering even after those 4 years. I think that will kind of really help a lot. And maybe I'm going to use that question to turn it back to you. And Komala, why don't you tell us about your startup? That's like really cool, right? It's not like everybody at your age has a successful startup. I mean, most people struggle through it much later. So tell us about your startup, what got you started, what it does. Tell us more.
Thank you. Thank you, ma'am. I don't want to take too much of everybody's time, but so I actually was doing my first year of engineering back in India, in Bangalore. Me and my classmate Kushal, my co-founder right now, we're right here. So we were doing aerospace engineering, and we had come from Sri Chaitanya. I don't know if many of you guys are familiar with that, but it's a high school where we are rigorously taught for like almost 12 hours to like 15 hours per day how to get into IITs. So coming from that background, when we went to college, we kind of expected something else, that college is really going to be that place where, we can be our true selves, we can learn amazing things and be actually career ready. But we stepped into college, and it, I guess you could say, it really popped our bubble, because we found that most of the colleges we interacted with our classmates in other colleges in Bangalore, and most of the times tier 2 colleges, they're very similar to how high school is. There's just normal exams, professors who aren't very enthusiastic to teach you, to answer questions that you might have, and it all depends on the student to really go out and do certain things of their own want. But the problem is, it's during that age where you've already come from such a stressful time, where you actually don't want to put in more efforts right now by yourself, and you kind of want things to be a little bit more easier so you can traverse your career better. So we saw this when we were studying first year back in 2017. So Kushal and I said, you know what, we have to do something about this, right? We're going to be engineers, we're going to be graduates in a couple of years, and this isn't how things should be going on. So in 2018, we started a nonprofit called Vimana, where we actually worked on a couple of moonshot projects with students across Bangalore and a couple of institutions like the Indian Institute of Astrophysics and Horticulture. We worked on a couple of these projects. We, got them to this execution part. We wrote a couple of research papers. We did a lot of events for students across Bangalore, and we were seeing how students interacted with these and how well they were taking these back. How many students came back to us and told us, this was amazing, I'm looking forward to more things by you. But then the pandemic hit and we were not able to meet up anymore. All of the things that we had done so far, right? Every project that we had done was in person. Students would meet up right? And so there was not just technical skills being built, but communication skills, team building skills, right? Presentation skills that were being built up in the process. But the pandemic halted our progress very, very badly. But the problem remained the same, that students are not career ready in the current education system. What currently engineers are kind of taught in many of the tier 2 colleges in India. So we thought to ourselves, it's the time to pivot. We need to do something more. I actually have a small little presentation about what Sapientry exactly is, which is my startup that I founded in December of 2020. It might be like, I think 6 or 7 minutes. So I think I'll talk about exactly what the startup is and
Actually, hold the thought, Komala. So here is the thing. You have a lot of things to offer too. My suggestion is before you leave, let's do another session where you talk about Sapientiary. We should absolutely do that because that'll be very inspiring. I think that calls for actually a separate session, and you're as eminent. So let's do that. Okay, we're not restricting it to just people who are vice presidents, not necessarily. So you and in fact you are a founder of a startup too. So let's just do that. That way, let's not steal the thunder from your presentation for that now. Okay,
Okay.
perfect. That way we can leave other people to ask questions specifically to Vanitha Kumar. Is that okay?
Yeah, totally, ma'am.
Because there is another
It
person
was
who's
really nice
asking.
to hear about this. Thanks so much for sharing, and that makes us all very curious to know more about your startup. And congratulations to you for doing this at such a young age, like thinking about the community at such a young age. I think that's really wonderful.
We will plan this for next Saturday. So whoever is on this session, is that okay, Komala? Can we try same time next Saturday?
Yeah, sure, ma'am. That
Okay,
works.
so next Saturday we'll wait to hear from all of you on your interest in joining this. But either ways, we'll go ahead and do this next Saturday at 10 o'clock. So stay tuned for Komala's session on her startup. There's another person who has a question here. So how to be an inventor and innovator? And he says, unbelievable to hear your achievement of 200 patents. It's from Shyam.
Well, actually, I should say in Qualcomm, it's the culture is very much there, right? It's kind of like when people. Okay, the one main thing about invention, people think of invention, they're like always thinking about inventing a brand new drone, or like inventing gravity, or I don't know, something like that, right? Like, it doesn't, not all inventions have to be something like completely revolutionary, right? A lot of patents and inventions actually tend to be very evolutionary in nature, right? Like, hey, we have done XYZ in this manner, right? Can we do better and get more improvement, more performance, right? So that is kind of like, we in Qualcomm, we're pretty much taught to think that way from day one, because if you have the same problem, somebody else is going to have the same problem as well. That means they can also get to the same solution, and it's almost like the way of living for us, because if you think of the same idea and you don't have it patented, somebody else has patented it even though you thought of it first. That's obviously not good for you, because then you have to pay them the licensing, right? So we are very much taught to think about any improvements that we can think of, right? Improvements that we are going to standardize, a different way of like power savings, or a different way we use the specified standards, or a different way we come up with the software solution on how we manage everything from like data transmission to power control, all kinds of things. All of those are very patentable for us. So I think I would say, so a lot of our patents, it's not like we sit and have a session saying, oh, let's try to invent something, right? No, a lot of our patents tend to kind of naturally fall out of our discussions, naturally fall out of the problems that we really do have to solve to keep our products successful and competitive. So I think that is by far so a lot of them just kind of fell out of those discussions, not in a very deliberate attempt to, oh, let's go file a patent. Didn't happen that way.
Okay, wow. So we have another question from Radha Venkatakrishnan, who says, as a career banker, what are your views on the implications of fintech, and more particularly cryptocurrency? What role will your technology play in that?
I think this the role of technology, I think, in finance, which is, I think this fintech is a new term that actually got coined as part of that synergy, right? I think it's going to be huge. And I think the two big roles, I think the two big technologies that are actually going to play a big role in fintech is basically, data sciences, machine learning, right? And I think, and both of that is all about, just think about it, right? Like, like how much can you, for people who are new to that area, like the world of finance is all about being able to, predict trends, any kind of trends, right? Whether it's like commodities or stocks or bonds or any kind of trends, right? And the problem with trends is they are not linear. You can't see XY relationship in a straight line manner, because if everybody can see it that way, then everybody will be billionaires, right? Because then you know exactly what to do to see your, like money double up or triple up in no time. So the non-linearity is what the machine learning can exploit really, really well. What are the various factors that are affecting the trends, and how do you learn the impact of those factors on the various trends? And that requires lots and lots of data and lots of training, which is what, like, machine learning is, right? And where does our technology going to help with that one? Now you're with a lot of connectivity, right? The ability to do a lot more compute and have all that connectivity on a mobile device. That basically means you have the option to bring a lot of that intelligence much closer to the device. I think so. That's where I think there will be a lot of very exciting opportunities. In fact, like a lot of the students that I know who are majoring today in data sciences, they tend to graduate a lot more towards the fintech field than any of the very conventional STEM industries, right? That's kind of where I see them migrate, because there is like a big demand there. And obviously the conventional investment bankers don't know the technology. So they need the technologists to kind of help them build the right trends. And here, literally, it's the firm that has the smartest and the most real-time algorithm is really going to win. So I can see how this is now like really a technology race, even for the companies in finance.
Wow. Okay. So we have another question from Aditi Rao, who says, do you see more of semiconductor fabrication plants coming up in the US, especially with kind of semi-crisis right now? From Shyam. Yeah, I think I have personally seen the impact of the crisis of chips right now, but go ahead, ma'am.
Yeah, well, I don't think that the current, so like having a semiconductor plant it's not like like putting up like a like a manufacturing. It's not like like making like oxygen cylinders on the fly that we had to do in India or something like that, right? Because the the amount of investment required to make a semiconductor fab is actually a lot, right? Because you need very clean rooms to actually do that, right? You can't have any impurities. And to be very profitable in fab, which is why we have so many few fabs, is because the only way a fab can be profitable is if you can keep it running all the time, right? You can't have, oh, I'm just making some chips in the morning and I keep my lines free. No, that's no way to make money in fab. So I don't think anybody will be building fabs just for the current crisis. So I see existing powerhouses as fab building more plants maybe, but again, they will only do that if they can really feel that they can sustain, they can justify the cost. Because again, it's fabs, the nodes are important. Like you can't use the same line for making like a 5 nanometer technology on the same line as a 4FF technology, because they all require different lines. So the logistics associated with starting and keeping a fab running is actually very complex.
I have a question, Vanitha. So in your role, what percentage of your job involves product knowledge, uh, then common sense and hardcore electrical engineering?
Right now, there is no part of my job that requires hardcore electrical engineering. I can easily say that, right? But it does require a lot of, because that's what happens. Right? Electrical engineering is a very broad field, but over time, when people, based on what domain they are in, they kind of get into that, they get into a very specific domain. And my domain is cellular technologies, right? So it requires a lot of knowledge in cellular technologies. So, but not like, but I don't like, on a daily basis, deal with, I don't know, core circuits or designing circuits, and that's not my job, right? So in my case, it product knowledge is like, I would say is like the fund. Okay, the cellular technologies. On top of that, the products that we make and the industry, right? That knowledge maybe is the layer on top of it, and then of course the layer on top is definitely the common sense.
Makes
So
sense.
yeah, it
That makes
requires,
sense.
I would say, the domain knowledge that is most relevant to us. Yeah.
So one of the um, motives of having a session like this is to inspire youngsters to not just be focused on like one track. I see that even with my boys, with my older one. He takes on something and just delves only into that, but forgets about how many different aspects are involved in actually making a job successful, for example. Now, one of the things that I think a lot of people lack in, especially people who are very interested in STEM areas, is that they don't have the ability to articulate themselves sometimes. They just sit in front of a computer and they do things. Can you tell me the importance of communication skills in your job?
Wow, that's such a like a beautiful question, Vanitha, actually, and that is very, very true. I mean, that I would say communication skills, I would say it's even more important than technical skills, actually, in a very strange way, right? Because we always see people who somehow are able to get those glamorous projects and whatnot because they can articulate what they can do even better than what they can actually do, right? So that is
Right.
such an important skill, being able to sell yourself, sell your ideas, uh, because otherwise, I mean, the fact is, you can always be sitting and complaining about how somebody less deserving than you got this cool project, but I think the main, but the thing is that if you cannot really articulate yourself, if you cannot really put yourself out there and tell them why it has to be you, or it has to be somebody that you are advocating, or the idea that you are advocating that has to be chosen, I would say everything is lost. So there is definitely maybe in a, if you are more of an individual inventor where you are doing just like freelance projects where you're doing something on your own, maybe you can just get away by just putting your head down and doing what you need to do. But in a corporate world, that is simply not enough. Communication skills, I would even put them above technical skills, because it's just so critical, actually.
Yeah, and I've noticed often that the people who can speak well and write well also, often it's about, you know, fewer instances where you can actually communicate and leave a lasting impact. However, when you word an email in a way where you make it very logical, list out certain things logically with bullet points and, group them correctly, it makes such a big difference. And I noticed that students are so focused on, very narrow fields of specialization that they forget that writing is a skill that you have to pick up. Articulating yourself is a skill that you have to pick up. Without all that, you can never be a well-rounded person and be successful. And that's one of the things I want to drive also, that point, because I think that it's important that it comes from people like you, successful people like you. Other people can just keep saying it. Like, for example, I'm not saying parents are not all parents are successful in their own ways, but sometimes when parents say to the kids, they don't get it. When they see somebody who's successful say that this is a skill you have to learn, then they take it up seriously.
Yeah. No, that, in fact, I can very easily say that I have seen extremely smart people do very poorly in corporate environment because they cannot say a few words coherently. I've seen that over and over and over again, actually. So it is, I would say, a fundamental skill. It's not like an optional skill that engineers can have, or anybody can have. I think it's a fundamental skill for everyone.
Yeah. I rightly agree with that, Vanitha ma'am. I think one of the things that I've seen in my classmates back in India is that, many of them, they do have really good technical knowledge, but when it comes to the interview rounds or the first 1 week or 1 month of when they get placed into a company, they find it so hard to get adjusted with everything, or they don't know how to speak. So I want to ask you, what are some ways in which possibly older children can actually learn these essential skills? Like, what are some ways that you have maybe taught your daughters or other people on how to hone your skills in these areas?
Actually, I think today, right, the number of opportunities for kids, I mean, for kids who are here, I'm not very sure about, like, I think it's also possible for kids in India and high school. In here, right, there are so many opportunities for kids in high school, right? There are so many like academic and non-academic clubs for kids to participate. Like, there's like, speech and debate team and robotics, science Olympiad, so many things, right? I think all of those are opportunities for kids to practice these skills. Actually, I would say, going back to my own childhood, right, and my parents are actually on this call, and I have to say, I owe it a lot to them for how much they emphasize these skills. These were not obvious skills that parents in that time and age would emphasize, or definitely emphasize for their daughters, right? But I would say my dad did an outstanding job, right, in terms of encouraging us to use our voices, right? So, and we didn't have so many opportunities, right? Not this many clubs and everything, but he would always, if we had an opportunity where we could go talk somewhere, right, whether it's like, essay competitions or speech competitions, or any club or opportunity where we could travel outside, he would always encourage it. He has never told me not to travel for competitions or anything like that, right? Like, because a lot of people at that time were like, oh, why should girls be traveling here and there? Contrary to that, he would actually push us to go and participate in all of those things, and really put ourselves out there, right? Whether it's like, oh, whether you are negotiating with a hotel manager for something, or something random, right? It could just be a travel thing, or maybe you're trying to set up a tour in Ooty and you're trying to negotiate. To the extent possible, he will make us do it. And that's true even for my sister. He would say, oh, you go take care of it, right? And I think that was really helpful, because you early on, you learn to do these micro negotiations, right? It's all about give and take. How do you get what you want? Like, how do you, like, get to that win-win outcome? And I would say I didn't appreciate the impact of all of that until like much later, right? So I think, I'd say my parents did an phenomenal job of encouraging us to go do that, other than just like focusing on our core curriculum and all of that, right? And here I would say there are like plenty of opportunities there here for like kids to be participating in clubs. And in clubs, there will all these politics in high school clubs. I think they're just amazing, because they are a great learning opportunity for kids to know how to advocate for themselves, right? I think and I've been like when I have made this mistake many times, and I would, because from that mistake, I would tell the fellow parents, right, if your kids have those little politics in high school, for that, to an extent possible, let them sort it out, right? It's a great skill for them to it's a great skill for them to like deal with it, learn how to deal with that situation, as opposed to parents coming to their rescue all the time and fighting for them. It's a good thing to learn. And I would say for those of you with sons, like, encourage them things like being supportive of their women, like girls in their class, right? Like, don't, if they say, oh, girls, who wants girls in my in my project, or in my assignment, actively talk them out of it. This is a good age to talk them out of it, because it's too late to do it later on, right? So this is the time they have to know, because if your son is saying that, somebody in your daughter's class is saying that too, right? So it is kind of impacting everybody, right? So it's
You're
good for
spot
them
on.
to know how to be supportive of people of all kinds of gender and background and races and everything from the time they are small. So it's important that we don't kind of actively pass on our biases to them.
You're spot on, Vanitha. And in fact, part of your answer stole the words from my next question. So you use the word negotiate. That's something I hear, and I know I personally faced this. I've gotten much better at it in the last few years. Women are generally not very good with negotiation. When I say negotiation, I don't mean negotiating with a customer, but it could just be negotiating better salaries, it could be negotiating a better project in the company. Do you have, and again, that goes back to, can you articulate yourself well? But that is not just enough. You can articulate yourself very well, but you might not be assertive enough to ask for what you want. Do you have any tips on how to do that?
So I think I'd go back to what Radha said earlier, right? Women think a lot more with their heart than their head. I think that kind of plays a lot into this negotiation thing. And that is just in one aspect, if I see that happening again and again, right? So I see that happening a lot in the negotiations, right? So there are two aspects I would say that kind of really come in the way. One thing that I see is like women process information so much real time, and I think it's kind of like a curse for us, right? Because when somebody is saying something, our mind is running, oh my god, like, if somebody says, oh, maybe you don't have the right experience for that job, right? The first thing we are thinking is, oh my god, they think I'm not qualified enough, they think I'm not good enough, they think I don't think I can do it. So our mind races, like, at the speed of light, right? We try to like project and think all kinds of, I mean, for one sentence that somebody may say, we derive 100 implications out of that thing, right? And again, going back to that, we think so much from our, right? Because we're just so conscious of that. And we're immediately reeling in terms of, we're getting offended, we're getting angry, we're getting emotional. So all at the same time, right? I think the good thing with that is, I think, to kind of, when you are asking for something, I think at least what has kind of worked for me is, and I tell that a lot, to my teammates. I like to use the I word a lot, because the I words are a lot more powerful than you words, because you words sound very offensive. It's, if I tell them, if my manager says, oh, I think you are not fit for that assignment or something like that. If I tell him, hey, you're not being fair, I'm attacking him, right? If I tell him, hey, the way you are saying it, it's making me feel like as though I have not earned my my success here. It makes me feel as though I don't deserve this. It makes me feel as though I have put in so much effort, I'm being sidelined for this opportunity. Because the power of I and me is because they can't deny it. How can they possibly deny that's what I feel about it, right? Then they have no choice but to engage with you, right? Instead of saying that, hey, you are sidelining me, if I say I feel sidelined with your decision, then they do have to answer me, because at that point, it's about them trying to console me and not the other way around. So I think that kind of, I think, can be a very powerful tool for any kind of negotiation, using the I more than the you. And yes, and sometimes I think it's also important not to get too offended by what people say. I think it's good in corporate world requires a thick skin. There's really no two ways about it, right? So if it's good to, if you are a sensitive person, it's good to kind of, and you're going into a difficult conversation, it's good to deliberately leave that sensitive part out. Try to, if the reality is, at the end of the day, we all have our different scales in terms of what offends us. I would say in general, I wouldn't say between the scale of, hey, I can let people walk over me, to I get offended by every little thing somebody says. If you are a little bit on the thick skin side, not get too offended, kind of keep the conversations balanced and all about what you need to accomplish, then maybe there's more to get out of those conversations.
Beautiful answer. We've crossed the 1 hour mark, and I was wondering, Komala, do you have any other leading questions here? Should we open it up for the audience to ask maybe 1 or 2 questions more?
Yeah, definitely, ma'am. I think a couple of people have already put some questions in the chat. We can go ahead with those. So I think the first one being Karthik. Seeing the robust innovation in the networking industry, how do you see it impacting the environment?
Well, like I mentioned in the first slide, right, we see, and I'm just going to go with 5G as an example, and I would just say the connectivity revolution that's coming, right? I think that's going to touch everything, right? So, and I think environment, and the first example that I can think of is the smart cities project, right? So right now we talk about IoT. The biggest part of the smart cities is exactly this, right? How do you have smart devices in a city so that you are being very, very efficient with water usage, power usage, electricity usage, all of that stuff, right? So that's where everything from being able to detect water leaks to being able to carefully monitor the water being consumed, being able to turn off street lights that that you don't need, and kind of turning them on only based on need. Making sure you have smart traffic lights that are capable of regulating the intervals of when it turns green and red based on traffic there, so that that in turn helps how your car manages its fuel. So all of those are like, just like I said, that's why we call it the invention age, right? Because there is, all of those are just only left to people's imaginations in terms of what more you can do with them.
Oh, okay.
I think I saw somebody raise their hand.
Atul has sent a question. He's asking,
okay.
yeah, will using the I and me interchangeably be considered as manipulative if it is changing the direction of the conversation?
Not really at all. It depends on whether how much you own the narrative, right? If this is kind of how if you're generally not the person that never uses use the you word if you're complimenting somebody, right? But if you are trying to put if you're trying to point out something that somebody did, the best way to do that is by saying the impact of what happened, right? So I mean, in fact, this is a conversation, this is something they recommend even for giving feedback to somebody, right? Never tell somebody, oh, you were rude to that person. Instead, what you can say is, hey, because you said X, Y, and Z, it made the other person feel this way, right? So that is like explaining impact, and that is the power of the I word, right? It gives the impact of what has happened as opposed to what somebody did. Because if you tell somebody, hey, you're being rude, they will say, no, I'm not being rude. If you're being offensive, no, I'm not being offensive, right? Because they don't intend to be all of that stuff, but that is the impact that they are having.
Oh, okay, thank you.
I just have a question to follow up with what you previously said, ma'am, about like, technological innovations. I think even in your presentation, you had mentioned like the past 30 years are one thing and the next 30 years are another thing. The scale at which technology is advancing is just insane when compared to the whole scale of how many years modern humans have been on this earth. So maybe what are some things that you are scared of, or some things that maybe you can say are unintended consequences of the rapid technological advances that are happening?
Well, the unintended consequences, I think one thing that I think we all know, right? Like too much, some people call this the social isolation, right? Too much reliance on digital friends and digital everything, that how does that replace kids just running around and playing, just chatting, right? like uh, uh, like when we were in high school, we used to spend a lot of time just sitting around and chatting. I don't even know, I can't really put any purpose to those conversations, or I can't quite tell what was accomplished. I can't say we were actually even playing, just talking, right? Just talking about random things, right? So I don't know if kids do those things these days. They're just like, they seem to be like, I feel like my own daughters have a schedule even busier than mine, actually. So I think that is by far the biggest concern, I would say, with this. Like, we're a lot more attached to our digital friends than our real friends. So so I think that is I mean, we are all so connected, yet sometimes so alone. So I don't know.
Very, very rightly said, ma'am. We're so connected, yet we're so disconnected from reality. I think that's something that a lot of people, a lot of kids especially, are facing, because that's how they've been brought up for the past 10-ish maybe years. And yeah, I think we can only hope that more innovations take place to overcome this or to help those out.
Yeah. And how many times parents on this call had to tell their kids to put their phones down for dinner, right?
Yep. Yep.
So.
Okay.
I think you're responsible for that.
Yeah, I guilty as charged.
Perhaps we can take one more question from the audience. Just one last question.
I might have one question if nobody else has any. So we recently just went to Yosemite, and we discovered the connectivity was very poor. And not only there, but like most of the like halfway through, like there was absolutely no connectivity. And my husband was commenting that in India it's much better because it's he was basically saying there's more usage and there's more need for cellular connectivity even in remote areas. So do you have any comment on that? Is it actually better in places like India, the cellular connectivity where it extends to even remote areas versus US?
Um, I wouldn't say that actually, because of course, any part of the world you can always find some place which doesn't, have connectivity. So, yeah, no. In terms of like the landscape, like you're looking at the surface area connectivity, definitely US is like at least statistically speaking, US is definitely a lot more connected than India. But in India, maybe this is a completely different, topic on its own. The India, the problem is not so much connectivity, but accessibility, right? That is definitely a problem. There is a lot, even rural areas in India are like very well connected, but the accessibility is not there. And the reason for that is, right, I mean, there are statistics from GSMA and everything that talks about, how much the cellular cost per month needs to be as a percentage of monthly income for it to actually be affordable to many people. So because of that, a lot of people in rural India, even though there is actually like footprint and coverage, they just don't have access because it's just not affordable enough for them. So, but that's of course not answering, like that's not what you were asking, but that's a different problem in places like India.
And that
Thank
actually
you.
brings up another question. What percentage of Qualcomm spending is on research and versus product development? And even in research, how much effort is spent on cutting down cost of cellular technology versus moving to the next generation of cellular technology? I mean, I don't know if this is something you can answer, but you're allowed to answer rather.
Well, Qualcomm, there is like, without actually going to dollar numbers, there is like a lot of percentage of our money is spent in R&D because, that's something that we thrive on, right? Because we have like a very, very, very rich patent portfolio, which is fundamental to our business. So when something is so fundamental to your business, then you do kind of tend to invest in that a lot, right? And remember, at the end of the day, the cost of connectivity is not decided by Qualcomm, right? Like I showed you exactly where we play in that role, right? In fact, we don't even play such a big role in the cost of a phone. That is decided by the phone manufacturers, right? We provide the key chipsets, the RF connectivity chipset, the baseband connectivity chipset, and but that is all. The rest of the phone's cost is completely decided by the manufacturers. And the same thing with connectivity charges, they are decided by the carriers who deploy those networks and provide those services. That's really not decided by Qualcomm.
Got it.
Okay,
Cool.
I think if we do have time, and there was one last question. Okay, I think Kashal, you were raising your hand before.
Oh yeah, two quick points. First of all, last week I was reading Jacob's story about CDMA, how tough it was to convince the whole industry to migrate from FDMA to CDMA. So happy to see that Vanitha ma'am started her career at Qualcomm with that project. Secondly, the tech folks are generally very curious about what the next rollout of Snapdragon is, with latest one being 865 plus. So when can we as STEM educators expect something coming from Qualcomm that's somewhat equivalent to Broadcom backed Raspberry Pi or Arduino platforms, which really can help in the education sector?
Actually, that's a very good question. By the way, I will tell you this, since you brought up Dr. Jacobs' story, there are a lot of inspiring stories about Dr. Jacobs, but I do have to say one interesting thing. So for people who on this call who don't know, Dr. Irvin Jacobs, he's basically PhD in electrical engineering, a pioneer in the world of, wireless, done so many books. And he's like Kushal said, he's the one that brought CDMA to cellular wireless, right? And this also ties into some of the earlier conversations we were talking about. He actually, when he started doing college, his first year, his major was hotel management. That was his major, right? He was doing first year MIT hotel management, and his roommate was a double E major, and he was getting straight A's in MIT. And his roommate told him the reason you are getting straight A's is because you're not in electrical engineering. You're doing, hotel management, which is super easy, and that's why you're getting straight A's. So just to challenge his roommate, he took a couple of courses in electrical engineering and aced them. And that changed not just his future, that changed the future of the whole cellular industry as we know it. So I just thought since you mentioned Dr. Jacob's story, I thought I'll kind of, leave you with that. And the second part of the question, Kushal, that's actually a very, very good question. We do have platforms actually that for some reason, I don't know why we don't sell it outside, but internally, our interns will all have access to that. We call it our, Red Dragon board or something like that. It's basically for people to play with the mobile applications and connectivity. It's basically Snapdragon on a Raspberry Pi kind of a kit, actually. So we have that internally, but somehow, we don't, I'm not sure why we don't sell it outside, maybe because the learning curve is higher, maybe the APIs are a little bit more tricky. That part I actually have to investigate myself. I'm not very sure, but people who are internal to Qualcomm do have that. There is that board. I think we call it the Red Dragon board, if I remember right.
That was a very inspiring story, Vanitha, about Dr. Jacobs, actually.
Yeah.
So we have Deepika here. Oh, yeah. So Deepika Rajesh is one of our upcoming speakers too. She is the director of R&D in a biotech company here in Madison. A very inspirational person as well, and I know that you know her too, Vanitha. So she will be doing that talk in a few weeks. But I think before Komala leaves to India, we'll definitely have her do that talk. And Kushal is the co-founder, right, of Sapientiary?
Yeah, that's right, ma'am.
So maybe the two of you could do it jointly. So it'll be very inspiring, and let's plan that for next Saturday. Thanks a lot, Vanitha. It was a very beautiful session, very inspirational for me and for everybody who attended today. Hoping to continue our association with you through SciArt Services. And thank you, Komala, for moderating and for all the leading questions and for accepting to do this at short notice as well. I want to just say a few words, closing words. SciArt Services does a lot in terms of trying to propagate computer science and math to very young kids. We try to teach them printable programming, which is something that my husband, Professor Krishnan Suresh from the UW Madison, conceptualized. So what it does is it's in JavaScript. It doesn't require any specialized software applications, all in the cloud. And you get to create patterns like geometrical figures. So you use concepts of addition and subtraction, but more geometrically, and work with objects to create, whatever you want. You can design whatever you want, and then you can print it on a 3D printer. So you get to tangibly see the effects of your programming, and you get to learn, things like at the middle school level, you get to learn a lot of programming constructs and like things like for loops, and you understand it more fundamentally using that approach. So my husband is going to be doing some train the trainer sessions. So if you're interested in joining that and teaching printable programming to other middle school kids in your state, please feel free, contact us. Go like our SciArt Services page. We have a lot of talks coming up and a lot of eminent speakers lined up and a lot of these activities going on. If you're interested in the arts, we have a lot of different concerts as well. And we're a non-profit. We don't charge anything for this, for any of the services that we do. But, we request that whenever you feel like it, please do make a contribution, because that can benefit a lot of underprivileged kids. We offer STEM scholarships and art scholarships to kids in India and here. So please do take a look at our Facebook page. We also have a website that's coming up soon. So do stay tuned, and please do attend the upcoming sessions as well. Big round of applause again to our speaker today, Vanitha Kumar, and to Komala Chenna. Thank you again, everybody.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. This was, you have a very accomplished audience. So thank you so much for the opportunity. Thank you, Komala.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you,
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
For this amazing session. And thank you all for attending it and with your wonderful questions. really, I was scared that maybe the audience might not be super engaging, but it was actually astonishing to me to see so many wonderful questions come up. So thank you all for your time as well.
Thank you so much.